Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a brand new starter tank in the Cold War game mode. It is of course the TVP VTU 88. This is an Era 1 medium tank. It's a Czechoslovakian medium tank and it is a starter tank in the Eastern Alliance Tech Tree. It's already in the game in the World War II game mode as a Tier 8 Czechoslovakian medium tank, and I'm not a massive fan of the copy and paste kind of thing they've got going on at the moment. I think it's a little bit lazy. Let me know in the comments what you think, but I guess it does make the battlefield a little bit more varied, especially in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode. And as this is a starter tank, it's free, which means you can get this without having to pay for it, but once you get it, the grind is a little bit tough because this isn't a fantastic tank, as we'll find out in this video. So we're going to head over here to this Excel spreadsheet and I'm going to compare the TVP 88 to the Centurion Mark II and the T44A. They are both starter tanks in the Cold War game mode and they are good comparisons to the TVP 88. We're going to talk a little bit about the DPM and penetration values of the TVP 88 and where they stack up compared to every single Era 1 tank. We're going to talk about my commander and equipment setup. I'll tell you about the lack of armour this tank has, and then I have two gameplays for you to follow up at the end. One with the 105mm gun package and one with the 88mm gun package. So to start off with, we're going to discuss the hit points and the view range of all of these tanks. And if you haven't seen my spreadsheets before, green is the best stat, orange is in the middle and red's the worst. And when we get down here to these stats highlighted in yellow, that's the stats updated with my commander and equipment setup applied. But for now, let's talk about the hit points. And as you can see, the TVP VTU 88, once it is fully upgraded, has 1500 hit points. This is 170 less than the Centurion Mark II, but it is a little bit better by 100 than the T44A, so somewhere in the middle. And orange is how I would describe the TVP 88, something in the middle. It's not fantastic, not the absolute worst, but it is a bit of a pain. In terms of its view range, it's 450 meters, which is 10 less than the Centurion Mark II and 25 better than the T44A. But as I support tanks, or supporting the heavy tanks and sniping, this view range shouldn't be too much of an issue with the True Vision system. And now we get on to the mobility of the TVP 88, and it does look like good news because a lot of these stats are covered in green, but bear in mind we are comparing just the two other tanks. There are a lot of other tanks that are a lot faster than the TVP 88. It's not the worst mobility you are going to see, but it's by no means the best. It has an engine power of 700 horsepower, a power to weight of 19.7, a top forward speed of 56 kilometers an hour, a top reverse speed of 24 kilometers an hour, a hold traverse of 44 degrees a second and a turret traverse of 32 degrees a second. Things to note from these stats: the power to weight isn't too bad for getting up to your top speed of 56 kilometers an hour. 24 kilometers an hour in reverse is quite nice, and your hold traverse is quite good for trying to avoid getting rammed and avoid shells. Once you do get up your momentum, it's a lot faster than something like the Centurion Mark II, as you can see here. But bear in mind, with this comparison, you are comparing the TVP 88 to a Centurion Mark II that can play hold down and use its turret armor, and the T44A, which has more usable armor than the TVP 88. So mobility is kind of somewhere in between, but in this comparison it is the best out of these three options, but it's by no means the best in Era 1, and you will get outrun by a lot of tanks. It's just kind of average. You could use mobility equipment, but because of the terrible gun handling this tank has, which we'll get on to now, I highly recommend that you don't use the mobility equipment on the TVP 88. So now we get on to the gun packages of the TVP 88, and you can see here that I've included two for the TVP 88. So the first one here, the 88mm gun, is the fully upgraded gun. It's the last gun package you get, and that's probably the gun package most people would use. But the 105mm gun package, which comes after the 100mm gun package, is the middle gun package, is also competitive, so I've included that as well, and I kind of prefer it sometimes for that higher alpha damage. But Let's start with the 88mm gun package then. It fires AP, APCR and HE rounds. The shell velocity on the AP is 1000 meters a second, so that's not too bad, but it is a little lacking for a tank in the Cold War game mode. APCR goes up to 1013 meters a second, and the HE is pretty damn slow at 600 meters a second, so you're going to have to watch out if you do fire those HE rounds to lead your targets enough. The penetration on the AP is 267mm, which is fantastic penetration for a standard round, meaning you won't have to fire too much gold at all. The APCR has very nice penetration as well at 318mm, and even the HE has pretty good penetration at 90mm, and you can make that work quite frequently against some of the lightly armoured tanks, especially the light tanks that are trying to run rings around you. The alpha damage, though, as it's an 88mm, is fairly low at 240 on its standard AP and premium APCR, and 295 if you penetrate the HE rounds. And when we compare to the two different guns, the 20-pounder on the Centurion Mark II and the 100mm on the T44A, which I think is the more competitive gun on that tank, you can see that standard round, it has the best pen on the TVP ATA. It has the best shell velocity on a standard round, but it does lack a little bit in alpha damage compared to the T44A. And then when we talk about the APCR, so the premium round, the shell velocity is still okay. It's somewhere in between, as is the penetration. The penetration of 318mm isn't too bad at all, but it definitely isn't as good as the T44A's heat rounds, which are 330, but bear in mind that's very hard to use against spaced armour, so you do have to watch out for that. And then when we get talking about the penetration on the HE, it's the best in this comparison. It's quite good penetration at 90mm. That's going to go through a lot of different plates in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode, but again, it does suffer compared to the T44A with its 100mm gun. And bear in mind that the T44A also has a 122mm gun, I believe, which is the top package with bad pen, but it does have 390 alpha damage, I believe. So now we get on to the 105mm gun package. So this is the middle gun package that you get with the TVP 88. This fires AP, APCR and HE as the 88mm gun does. It has 1000 meters a second, or 1005 meters a second, I should say, on the AP, so 5 meters a second more than the 88mm rounds. It goes up to 1120 meters a second if you choose to fire the APCR, and with the HE at 610 meters a second. Your penetration does suffer compared to the 88, though. You have 241 on your standard rounds, 287 on your premium rounds, which is still pretty good, and 95, so 5 more on your HE rounds, as these are higher caliber gun. And also, due to it being a high caliber gun, you have better alpha damage at 360 on your standard and premium rounds, and 470 should you penetrate the 95mm of penetration. The reason I've coloured this in green is because it just is better overall for shooting at mid to long ranges if you use the 105mm gun package. You do suffer in standard penetration. 241 isn't great in Era 1 of the Cold War gamer, but 287, if you can fire some premium rounds and you can afford to, you'll probably still make a silver profit, and that's not too bad at all. And for 360 alpha damage, it just feels like it slaps harder than the 240 alpha damage, because if you use the 88mm gun and you're not comfortable exposing yourself time and time again every sort of 5 seconds when you get your reload down, you will lose a lot of your hit points because you don't have any armor to sort of trade off, and you can trade better with this 105mm gun. So it might be a little bit better for those players that like to fire a little bit more premium, like to sit back and snipe and sort of chunk opponents off with the lower DPM. And now we're going to get to the gun handling then of these guns, and you can see here on the left the TVP 88 is kind of a mismatch of colours, so it's not fantastic news. The Centurion Mark II does have the better DPM, accuracy and aim time, and over here on the left we're looking at the 88mm gun now for the TVP 88 with a 2-second aim time and 0.38 accuracy, which is absolutely terrible for a Cold War tank, even in Era 1. The DPM is 2200 and 15.2, which means you have a 6.5 second base reload for 240 alpha damage. You carry 65 rounds, awful gun depression at 6 degrees, which can be very awkward on so many ridgelines in the game, but your gun elevation is pretty good, I guess, at 20, so that's a little bit of a tick for the TVP 88, but if we look in this comparison, you can see that although it does have kind of in the middle aim time compared to the Centurion Mark II and T44A, the accuracy is the worst in this comparison, as is the gun depression, and the DPM is only slightly better than the T44A's pathetic 2134.4, and it's by no means as good as the Centurion Mark II. And if we go over here to this other spreadsheet I've got with the DPM and the penetration stats of all tanks in Era 1, this is sorted from top to bottom, from the highest DPM to the lowest. We have to scroll all the way down here to get to the TVP VTU 88. You can see that the 88mm gun down here is low, but the 105mm gun is the third worst DPM in the whole of Era 1. And when you consider the best is like 3.3k, 4.2k, about 3000 DPM, you can see that this DPM is pretty shocking on the TVP 88. But then we go over to here in this spreadsheet which shows the penetration with the standard and premium. This is sorted at the moment with the standard penetration, and we'll have a look here at where the TVP 88 lies. So standard rounds sort of somewhere in the middle, a little bit more towards the top, so not too bad at all. That is the standard penetration on the TVP 88mm gun, and down here on the 105mm gun it's completely in the middle, so the penetration isn't too bad on the standard rounds. And then when we are going to sort the premium rounds from largest to smallest, you can see here that the 88mm gun again is sort of in the middle, maybe leaning slightly towards the top, and the 105mm gun package, the 287mm of penetration, is down towards the bottom. But it's not bad penetration for a starter tank. You can make it work. It's just actually trying to hit the blooming targets that you are trying to shoot at, and that's because of the pretty horrific gun handling that these gun packages have. So when you have the 105mm gun package, you have a 2.7 second aim time, even worse obviously than the 88mm gun due to the higher caliber. An awful 0.4 accuracy, DPM goes down to 2055.6, and your reload is 10.5 seconds for 360 alpha damage. You carry less rounds, but it is a higher caliber of gun, and you do have the same 6 degrees of gun depression and 20 degrees of gun elevation. So there are two competitive guns. Of course, if you choose the 88mm, you'll have better penetration, you'll have better DPM and slightly better gun handling, but you do have to expose yourself more, and you have terrible armor, and I'll talk you through that in just a little bit. But right now I'll tell you about my commander and my equipment setup. So in terms of my equipment, I run advanced loader, gun stabilizer and improved ventilation. And in terms of my commander, I run 6th sense, spawn leader, rapid loading, steady aim, rapid aim, snapshot, run and gun, armor angling and track mechanic. In terms of my equipment, I run the stabilizer to help my accuracy as much as possible, and the loader and ventilation to help my DPM, and the ventilation will also help my gun handling as well. There's a case for running the gun lay and drive because the aim time is so bad, instead of maybe the loader if you're not too worried about the DPM boost. And in terms of my commander, you could use firefighting instead of the armor angling or track mechanic, because this thing does get set on fire a hell of a lot, at least from my experience. So with my commander and equipment setup applied, you can see here these bits highlighted in yellow, and these are the updated stats to the gun handling and DPM with my commander and equipment setup applied. So on the 88, I've now got an aim time of 1.88 seconds, which is still quite long for a Cold War tank, especially for a low caliber gun. The accuracy has gone down to 0.25, which is kind of bearable. The DPM's gone to 2,911, which is a lot better. My base reload is just shy of 5 seconds. In terms of my 105mm gun package, when I use that, I now have a 2.54 second aim time, which is still pretty damn long. My accuracy has gone to 0.27, but again, that's still pretty terrible for a tank in the Cold War game mode, even if it is Era 1. My DPM's gone to 2,704, and my reload's gone to just shy of 8 seconds, basically 8 seconds for that 360 alpha damage. So you'll have to make the decision based on the gameplay which gun would suit you. I probably would prefer the 88mm gun, because I feel comfortable getting multiple shots for every one that I take, but for some players it might be worthwhile using the 105mm gun, and I'll let you decide on that one. In terms of the armour then of the TVP 88, there really isn't anything to shout about. The mantlet and the mid plate are 65mm thick, so you do have a lower plate, a sloped back sort of middle section go into a mid plate, and then you have the turret above that. In terms of the slope back section, which is 40mm thick, and you'll be able to go through that if you're taller than it. Unless it's at a ridiculously extreme angle, that's going to be penetrated and overmatched by even some very big guns. You'll need a 121mm caliber gun or higher to overmatch the slope back portion of the upper plate, and the lower plate is 40mm, so pretty much everything's going to be going through that, even some HE rounds. The sides of the tank are pretty damn thin as well. It's 40mm of side armour pretty much all the way down the side, so that's going to be pretty crap for side scraping and penetrated very, very easily indeed. And if you're looking to go through the rear of this tank, it's only 30mm, so yeah, fire HE through there and you should be absolutely golden. And if you want to go through the back of the turret, you're going to need 40mm of penetration or more to do that. But yeah, it's pretty crap armor, I should say, for a medium tank. It hasn't got any kind of armor to use. You can't reliably use anything at all, unless people hit your turret and you're using the terrible gun depression this tank has. They could hit the slope sort of side portions of your turret, which are 40mm, and they might bounce it if you're at an angle, but it's definitely not armor that you can rely on. So that's enough talking about the TVP 88. Let's head over now into the gameplay, and we're going to start off with the 105mm gun package. So you're joining me here on Dragon Ridge in the TVP 88, and in this gameplay we are using the 105mm gun package, which has 360 alpha damage. This is the middle gun package, and I came back to it after playing the 88mm for a while because I wasn't having fantastic games. I just wanted to see if I have any better games with this gun, and it's kind of the same as the 88mm, slightly different play styles, but you just have very mediocre games, enough to get you through the grind. You of course can have spectacular games in an A tank, but this is going to be one of the harder ones to have good games in. You can see here that the mobility isn't actually too bad once you are fully upgraded. It is a pain when it's stock and you just have to grin and bear it. You get up to your top speed relatively nicely, and here on Dragon Ridge it's going to be a very steep map to get around the different sort of hills here, so it's going to look a lot slower than it actually is. The traverse speed isn't too bad at all, and we're here into the position that I wanted to get into relatively quickly. So here in D4 we're going to try and spot out towards the centre of the map, towards the south of the map, at tanks that are crossing into position, and hopefully get some nice chunking big shots with this 105mm gun. So I just talked about the different playstyles between the 88mm and the 105mm gun. Basically, the 88mm gun obviously has the higher DPM, better penetration. You're going to have to expose yourself more often to put your damage in because of the higher DPM and the lower reload. But with this gun, you can kind of sit back, get your shots in a little bit slower, make sure they count, and then you're going to be chunking your opponents down slowly, but you don't have to expose yourself for as long, because you can see there, as I get shot for the first time in this game, I get penetrated, and that's just going to very frequently happen in this tank because it has absolutely terrible armour. One thing to note about both of the guns is that terrible 6 degrees of gun depression. On a map like Dragon Ridge, you're going to have to think about your positioning very carefully. It doesn't use ridge lines especially well at all, and you can see here, even when I'm at one of the highest parts of this map, I'm still struggling to get my gun down on tanks that are sort of mid-range to me, so I'm trying to fire at tanks that are on a level playing field. I'm using the True Vision system to try and spot out that FE 4005, and that's yeah, you can't really miss a barn, can you? Very easily, even with the terrible gun handling that this tank has. I'm just going to be very careful just in case the FE 4005 is looking this way as well. As soon as I pop a shot out, I'm not sitting in the same location. I'm using hard cover in this tank. You are relatively sort of large, medium tank, you're not going to be very hard to spot, especially when I'm skylining myself hit on this sort of ridge here, but I'm going to have to take my chances to get the shots in where I can. You can see that once you do let it aim in fully, you will hit your shots, but this doesn't do snapshotting very well, even with the 88mm gun. But yeah, the 105mm gun is worse for the gun handling, but it just feels better when you actually hit your shells, because 240 alpha damage, especially when you low roll, which you do very often in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode, because newer players have better RNG with the amount of damage that they take compared to players that have played a certain amount of games or something. I do forget how they changed it, but it means that you're rolling for sort of sometimes 150 to 190 160 to 190 I should say, and it just feels pretty bad, and it doesn't feel like it's worthwhile, and you have to put multiple shots in, and it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere. Whereas with this gun, you know, you get a shot in here, a shot in there, and it feels like you are racking up the damage quicker, even though you technically aren't. The one thing with obviously guns that have good DPM is that you have the ability to use them, and with this tank, with the poor gun depression, with the sort of lackluster gun handling, it can be very hard to hit your shells. So that's one of the reasons why I think this 105mm gun might suit some of the newer players that aren't as confident exposing themselves as often. But you can see here we get a shell into that FE 4005. Fortunately we track him and he misses our friendly. Now we've got this FE 4005, we're going to try and juke him to try and miss us as we go down these ridges. It's going to be hard for him to get an easy shot. Fortunately for us, he just trucks us, and that saved us. We're going to juke him again, try and get out of harm's way, get a shell into him, and hopefully one of our friendlies can take him off. But we're going to try and give him a little nudge, finish him off, but our T95E2 helps us, and we say thank you and move on. It's quite a close game. It's 6 against 6. We're up to 2.6k direct damage and 242 assistance. So I'm just trying to get to a position where I'm not kind of exposed in the middle of that field, and we're going to see if we can get a shot into this enemy TVP 88. And if you did want to know what different gun the TVPs are using, obviously this 105mm gun is longer with a muzzle brake on the end, and the 88mm is just a shorter gun, so that's how you can tell and you can judge your advances based on what gun the enemies are having. I see that my friendly here is going in on this 103A1, I mean TVP 88, that is just the top left hand corner deceiving me. We're getting some shells in, helping our friendly out here. This Object 165, and he takes out that TVP 88, and if you do see your friendlies going in, this is a good support tank to have, because you can use your pretty lackluster gun handling to get in close, take time to aim your shells, and you're kind of not going to be taking damage then, and it just makes it a lot easier. I hope that these gameplays really do highlight the differences in the guns, but also how this tank isn't fantastic for snapshot, and you've really got to let your tank aim in. You've got to think about your positioning and your sort of where you're aiming your shots, where you're leading your shots, just that little bit more than you do in some of the other starting tanks, and especially in some of the higher Era 1 tanks this will struggle against. But the grind isn't too long, you can get through it. It's just not one of the best tanks, and it's a little bit because I've played World War II, I've played this tank, and it's absolutely god-awful in Tier 8 on World War II, and I was just hoping for something new, but I'm still looking forward to getting the Škoda T50 and the TVP T50-51, because those are two of my favourite tanks in World War II, and they should be pretty fun in the Cold War game mode. So it's just the one enemy tank left. It's 5 against 1, so I'm feeling very confident here. We're getting a little bit of lag. I was having weird lag from my play session, but we do manage to find him. We try and snap on the move. It's just, yeah, it's not going to happen. I run all of the gun handling skills on my commander, just trying to get the most out of this gun. You can see the terrible aim time. That one tried its hardest to miss, but we do penetrate. We do low roll, but he is subsequently finished off by our friendly T95E2, which we had some good synergy with during this game. and that's a victory in a very kind of standard game that you can have in this tank if you do play it very carefully. That's a nice profit of 119,000 silver due to the op, I believe, that goes on with this line at the moment. 2 kills, 3.7k direct damage, 329 assistance, and yeah, that's it for the 105mm gun package. So now we're going to head over to the 88mm gun package and see how that performs. So now you're joining me in the second gameplay of today's video. We are in the TVP 88 with the 88mm gun. This is the fully upgraded TVP 88 with the final gun package. So we have a 5-second reload-ish for 240 alpha damage, slightly better DPM and gun handling, and we're going to see how we can make this work. Unfortunately, we still have the same 6 degrees of gun depression, which is going to be very awkward to use on ridge lines. And at the start of this battle on Thiepval Ridge, I'm going to head over here towards the eastern side of the map to the hill directly in front of me, where I like to go at the start of the battle here from this spawn and see if we can spot out people on top of the hill, get some assistance to get through the grind a little bit quicker, and also maybe bait some people round. And hopefully the enemies will come around and get shot up by my friendlies behind me. This Type 63-1 comes round. We are going to go after around there, but he does pop his smoke screen. We get a couple of shots into him, and you can see that the DPM does feel quite nice when you are able to use it. It's obviously not the best as I've shown you, but it is somewhere in the middle, and for a starter tank it's more than reasonable when you are able to use it. It's a little bit better at firing on the move is this 88mm gun than the 105mm gun, but you still can't reliably do anything with it. But it's all about making smart choices when you're grinding these starter tanks. So for instance here, I'm just trying to get some assistance by poking up, spotting people at the back and spotting people on this hill, and I'm just getting little bits of damage here and there, trying to bait people over, and hopefully I will bait them into stupidity and get all the assistance for it. And when I notice there's a tank like this T95E2 on my friendly team, I'm going to come over with him and attack and try and get some shots into the enemy. Unfortunately, we take a shell from the enemy TVP 88, but you can see here the penetration is very nice on these standard AP runs. We go through that M46A1, through the turret, straight through the front. Yeah, the penetration is one of the best things about this tank. It does mean that you don't have to fire too much gold, or any gold at all, with this 88mm gun. And now, with the support of our friendlies, we're going sort of for the tracks, trying to get the assistance, and I take a massive slap from the enemy FE 4005 in the background. Managed to snap a shell in. This is slightly better. That isn't indicative of the gun overall. It still feels fairly derpy, but now we have to play even more sensibly, and we've started playing on hard mode now in the first 3 minutes of the battle, because we have lowered our DPM to our hit points, I should say, down to 183. So we're going to have to play that support role from sort of mid to long ranges here, try and use the hard cover and foliage to hide us and not get hit again from the back where those enemies are hiding. That shows perfectly what this gun is like. Fully aimed, sometimes it just absolutely derps into the ground, or it just goes into oblivion. I have no idea where this gun is going sometimes. As you can see there that I run the smoke consumable with this tank. You could run the combat rations to improve your DPM and your gun handling, but due to the larger profile sort of size of this medium tank, I run the smoke screen to get out of trouble like this. And for moments like this, when I have got smacked by a big barn at the back of the map, we get a nice blind fire there into that M46A1. He's in the same position, so we're going to fire again, and you can see when you can put this gun to work, it does feel relatively nice with this DPM. By no means the best, but it is manageable. I think that sometimes it's just going to be a choice of your playstyle and what suits you best. We managed to bounce off an FE 4005 with this penetration. I guess it is firing at a relatively long distance, so we're going to lose some penetration in the air there. We bounce again. I'm guessing we're hitting his gun, because I'm pretty sure there's nowhere we should be bouncing on off an FE 4005, but it really does just highlight what these guns are like. Both are pretty terrible in terms of their gun handling. They're very derpy. It's just about trying to aim in as much as possible. You see there I didn't let it aim in fully, and the shot went whizzing over on that Object 165. Just make sure you aim in as much as possible. Obviously don't sit in front of someone if you know they're going to blast you, or you know you're going to be killed with one shot, but just be sensible about your choices, and when you do have your shots, make them count. Go for the tracks, go for the kills, go for the shots that you can actually penetrate, and that's how to get the most experience out of your games and how to get through your grinds as quickly as possible. I said it wrong there for the first time, and then nearly said it wrong again because I can't speak English. But in this battle we have picked up 2.7k direct damage already and 349 assistance. You can still do some pretty good work even if you are a one shot. Even if you had one hit point left, it's still a gun in the game. I'm still a danger to the enemy, and now I'm just trying to get some of my friendlies to go out and spot towards the south of this map where these FE4005s are hiding. And now it's just about patience. I'm not going to rush in and lose my tank because I can still get a few more shots in this game and pick up some more experience. I'm trying to get the tanks that are sat in the base as usual to try and move forward. I completely understand why players do that sometimes, you know. You're not that experienced with the maps, you feel like your tank is a sniper, you've got to do it, but hopefully by doing these videos and other YouTubers doing the videos and streamers, we can help newer players kind of get a bit more confident in advancing forward. And you can see here the trouble with the TVP 88 6 degrees of gun depression hanging over that rock there. We've now sort of exposed our position away to the people in the south, or the FE4005s in the south, but we do manage to snap a shot in there. We get some assistance and we get the kill on that M46A1, and I'm just waiting now to get re-stealthed, waiting in case the FE4005s were looking this way and they were going to blind fire me and looking at me with the True Vision system. I should be covered by the foliage in front of me, those trees that have been knocked down, and hopefully they won't be able to see me as I sit here waiting for an ambush shot as my friendlies go in and spot them out. There is a medium tank as well that I've got to be wary of, but I do want to try and get some extra shots in. You can see here that it does feel quite low when you're rolling, but when you do get the extra time to sort of aim in and put shot after shot in, it does rack up eventually. It just feels quite low with this 88mm gun, and it's all about preferences. It's nice for the 360 alpha damage, but obviously you have that horrific gun handling and DPM combined with this gun depression, and it can make it quite hard. I'd probably say I prefer the 88mm overall, and it will suit maybe more experienced players a lot better, and they'll probably have some pretty good games when you are given the correct kind of situation. So I noticed which tank fired. It was the one to the right, but they both fired now, but I'm putting my split screen up anyway just to confuse them a little bit. Gonna try and relocate in a different direction and see if we can get some sort of flanking shots and use my teammates that have more hit points than me to distract them, and then I can get shots into them when they are behind us. Hinkle on our team there, who's another community contributor, just saying that he is reloading in his auto loader. I think it's the TVP T5051, so we're going to wait a while until he's reloaded, then we can go in and either be a distraction or use the distraction to get some assistance or some direct damage in. We get one shot in there, we're going to try and get another shot in, have a bit of trouble there with our gun depression. He gets taken out by Hinkle in the TVP T5051, and now it's just this last remaining FE4005. We're using the free camera, we spot him down there with the True Vision system. He's looking the other way, he hasn't got a fully traversable turret, so we're going to go in. We roll extremely low because I loaded HE like an idiot and just auto-aimed where I should have aimed for the back of the turret, but nonetheless we still have a relatively good game in the TVP 88, finishing in second place, 2 kills, 3.6k direct damage. That's a second class mastery. Some people are doing some pretty good damage in this tank, and 479 assistance with, again, another profit of over 100,000 silver. So that's it for my review of the TVP VTU 88 with both of the 105mm and 88mm gun packages. I hope you found that useful. Thank you all so much for your support, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.